Hey y'all, it's Jennifer. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am coming to you with a reading vlog. So we are officially going into the week of Christmas and I just thought it would be kind of fun to do a reading vlog this week. I can't promise that a lot of reading will get done because tomorrow is actually going to be our family Christmas gathering, so we're having it a little bit earlier. It's not going to be right at Christmas. We are going to be doing something smaller on Christmas Eve, but it won't really be like traditional Christmas. It's just going to be very small. But I'm only going to work a couple of days this week, so I feel like there's going to be time to get some reading done. And I also just feel like it's going to be a great time to craft, relax. It has taken a long time for me to get into the Christmas spirit this year, quite frankly. But I got sick again at the very beginning of December and I was completely wiped out. I kind of missed doing birthday celebration things for myself and everything. I just didn't feel like doing anything. And I think that meant that I just was really not in the Christmas spirit. So I'm glad that I'm kind of feeling a little bit more up to it. And just in general, I'm feeling a little bit more festive. So I thought that I would carry you along this week. I am currently reading two things. One of these is on audiobook. And it is a fantasy romance that I'm kind of shocked I'm loving. It's called What Lies Beyond the Veil. And I feel like I've heard of this author before, but I have not heard very much about this series. And this is a series where like the Fae are beyond a veil, a magical veil, and that veil falls down. And certain people are kind of marked by the Fae. So it means when the veil falls, the Fae can claim some of these humans to come back to their world with them. And of course, our main female character has been marked by the Fae. I am so enjoying this, and I really did not think that I was going to. I kind of wonder if the audiobook format is really aiding me here, because the book certainly does feel very long. I think it's taken a long time to kind of get to the point because I don't want to say anything else about the plot other than that basic structure, because it felt like it took a really long time to get to that point. So I really don't know if I'm just enjoying this because I'm listening to it on audio, or if I really just am enjoying it. I think I'm kind of in the mood for something lighthearted just because there's a lot going on. I need something that doesn't take a lot of focus from me. And I completely picked up the wrong book, but I am finishing the Greenbone Saga. I am at the very end of Jade Legacy. I am about to finish out the trilogy. I'm really sad. I kind of don't want to finish it, really, because I know I'm going to go into a book slump. And I think it's going to be very hard to recover from it, because I'll tell you, I really do feel objectively that these are the best written books that I have read all year. They have been so well planned and well thought out. So I'm kind of sad that I'm about to finish the trilogy, and that kind of makes me worried about what I should pick up next. So I don't really know what's going to be on the agenda after this, but I kind of want to go on and finish some things out. That's why I wanted to pick up Jade Legacy. We are in the last couple of weeks of the year, and I really want to finish a few things. So I'm going to carry you along with me. I am about to make some fudge, and it is a recipe that I have never made before. It is not the family recipe at all, but it's going to be salted caramel fudge. And if it works out, I think it's going to be a really, really simple recipe. So hopefully we enjoy it, but I will carry you along for that. I'm also going to make some party mix, of course. This is the fudge recipe. I feel like the fact that it says microwave is kind of iconically country, iconically Southern, but don't laugh. I think it sounds really simple and I think it sounds really good. So hopefully everyone likes it. I mean, look how good they look. has set. Basically everything is done. It's nighttime, so tomorrow everyone is coming. And I did find time actually to finish the book that I was near the end of. I feel like this sounds really extreme, but I actually only had maybe 100, 150 pages left, and it was moving so fast I genuinely did not want to put the book down. So I finished Jade Legacy. Wow. The interesting thing about this series is just how you always felt so secure in her writing, if that makes sense. You always felt like she had a plan for this series, and after finishing it, I really do feel like she did. I feel like she had to have worked through the rest of this trilogy by having the ending in mind. The ending was so poetic. The last scene was just incredible, and it called back to so much about like the earlier books in the series, specifically how the series started, and it just was masterful to me. It really felt like I was in incredibly competent hands the entire time I was reading this trilogy, and I have been putting off finishing this trilogy for a really long time, basically because I knew that once I finished the third book I would go into a reading slump and I'd just be depressed that I didn't have any more from this series to look forward to. And I definitely feel that, but in other ways, I'm really, really satisfied. And to me, I'm kind of really happy with the ending because I'm really happy with where most of the characters ended up, and I loved every single character in this series. But I also want to celebrate the fact that so far, at least, it doesn't seem like there is any hint that Fonda really intends to return to this world in terms of a full-fledged novel. I believe there are novellas. There's at least one novella out that is set in this world. And I personally just like when somebody says a good thing is a good thing, but once it's over, it's over. And I'm kind of at the point in my series reading where I don't like that every series that an author puts out is interconnected. I say that when I think the next book that I pick up is going to be Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I'm going to read that entire trilogy, and that is definitely building on previous books that the author wrote that are set in the same world. Sometimes it doesn't bother me, and a lot of times I tell myself, I just understand the level of work that goes into world building, and so once you have done that once, it kind of feels wasteful in a way not to return to that world and not to utilize it for everything that it's worth. And so in many ways, I really understand why an author wants to do that and wants to set another series in the same world. I guess what I'm kind of tired of is setting a series in the same world with the same characters or with adjacent characters, because I don't like the idea that I actually need to have read everything from you in chronological order in order to understand what is going on in this. And a lot of times authors will say, oh, you can start anywhere, and it's just not true. Once Upon a Broken Heart is like that. I really feel like if you have any interest whatsoever in Caraval and the Caraval trilogy, you need to have read it before you go into this, because this series completely spoils that, and I think robs you of a lot of the enjoyment that you can have in that trilogy. So far at least, I want to celebrate the fact that Fonda has not chosen to do that. I feel like this trilogy completely shut the door on most of the characters. And some of the characters that I could see her coming back to, some of the characters I could see getting their own book, I don't necessarily think would be that interesting, because I really liked the gangster side of this. This entire series is about like a mafia style family. It's about gangsters. And so the majority of them are not really good people. I don't care. I love them. But of course, there were always people involved who kind of strived to either be good or to just kind of leave the clan behind and leave the family behind. And that just wasn't as interesting to me. I was not interested in somebody having a moral compass in this series. I was interested in them being a gangster, quite frankly. And so I thought this was interesting and layered, and all of the characters made so much sense. It's like once you got to know the characters in the first book, they remained very much the same. And so when you read a scene and you encountered a conversation where they were going to be involved, you kind of knew what the outcome was going to be. You knew what they were going to say. You knew how they were going to react to certain information. And that was just really interesting to me because I feel like that's rare. I also feel like this series just had a really great sense of danger, quite frankly. When characters were in danger, it felt legitimately real. It felt like at any point in time, anybody could die. And I really liked that the stakes remained high throughout the entire trilogy, and I never got mad when she backed down from that, when somebody survived something and you thought maybe they might have died. I wasn't ever mad about that because I was relieved. I was so invested in the characters. But the stakes were always so high that you were always incredibly worried about the characters. And so I just really think this was a masterfully written trilogy. I knew it was going to be basically my favorite of the year. I think there are some books in terms of emotional pull that I would say are probably bigger favorites than these. But I just feel like on an objective level, these are the best books I have read all year. I feel like these are so well crafted and they are just insane in terms of characterization. The quotes in here, how it is written, it is just really, really masterful to me. I have been genuinely impressed with this entire trilogy, and I actually don't feel that depressed that it's over. I'm kind of excited because I feel like the ending was really, really positive, and it ended the way I think the series should have ended, which is always great. So now I think I'm going to move on to Once Upon a Broken Heart so that I can read this trilogy. That's kind of one of the big things that I would really like to get done before the end of the year. I don't know that it's doable. In fact, I feel like now that we're in the last 2 weeks of the year, it's just going to be a snowball effect, and everything that I want to get done is probably not going to happen. But I definitely want to prioritize these because I think they feel very magical. I think that will help me remain in the Christmas spirit. But I also ordered a Christmas romance. I know. And I feel like it'll be perfect to read this week as we're gearing up for Christmas. I am not always a contemporary romance person. In fact, before this year, I would have told you I would never read one. But I actually think at certain times, especially when you're on vacation, let's say, or you're doing something fun and you need something lighthearted, I think a contemporary romance really, really works for me in those contexts. So I'm excited by this. Hopefully I can find a holiday romance that I like because I did start reading one a few weeks ago. I'll be real with y'all, it was awful. And I'll tell you what it was. It was Wreck the Halls by Tessa Bailey. It was so bad, I had to DNF it. That was my first Tessa Bailey. Actually, no, it wasn't. I've DNF'd another book from her. So I feel like Tessa Bailey is just not the author for me. So I've been kind of skeptical of other holiday romances, but we'll see how this goes. I'll keep you updated. It's Monday, so actually the Christmas party and the gathering was yesterday, and I just was totally and completely wiped out. So I did not update you yesterday. I feel like it went off without a hitch and it wasn't that stressful, which was really great. And my cousin's 3-year-old daughter was here and she told me that I'm her best friend. So, I mean, not to brag, but if you've ever been around a 3-year-old, you know how coveted that title is. But ITGIRL, you know I am that girl. Today, though, I went back to listening to my audiobook, What Lies Beyond the Veil. And this has almost totally and completely lost me, sadly enough. It really reached a point where I was dreading continuing on with it, quite frankly. It is so shocking how great the buildup was in the first half and how excited I was by this, how great it really seemed. I was just so excited about getting back into this audiobook today. I was looking forward to listening to it while at work, and I felt like it was really good to be reading on audio because I didn't feel like I was in danger of forgetting where I was over the weekend. The sad reality is basically all of the promise that was built up in the first couple of chapters to me has been completely squandered by the second half of the book being incredibly, incredibly slow. In some ways, that's been nice in terms of the character development, in terms of building the romantic relationship. At the end of the day, this is a romantasy, so that's what I should be rooting for. But essentially, the things that have really irritated me have not been the fact that the plot has been slow. What has really irritated me has been our main female character. I know you're shocked. I know you thought I was going to say the male main character got on my last nerve. He's had his moments. He's very, very crass. I mean, immediately. It did not take any build for him to start with the sexual innuendos. And they weren't even innuendos. It was just outright sexual comments that had me just staring into space like, dude, can you read the room? Because really now's not the time. In fact, there's never going to be a time you're not going to talk to me like that. And I respected the main female character because she kind of came out and said, I don't want to have anything to do with you if you're going to talk to me like that. And I just thought that was really refreshing. I kind of like the male main character though, because even though he has said those things, I actually feel like he does genuinely intend it as a joke. He's trying to do it to lighten the mood. And they're on the run. A lot of dangerous stuff has happened, and it's basically a travelogue at this point. And so I feel like he's actually doing it to lessen the tension, but I also feel like I have completely predicted the ending of this book. I know where this is going. I know what's going on with them as a couple. And so I think I can defend him and his actions because I kind of know what's going on, but I also know what's going on from her perspective if what I think is correct. I hate to dance around it like that, but I feel like if you have ever read a fae romance, you know where this is going. And it's not necessarily a plot line or a trope that I typically care for, but I think this has been at least kind of unique in the build-up because we don't technically know, we're assuming. So I kind of understand where she's coming from, but in almost every chapter lately, I am about 3/4 of the way through, and I have loved our main female character up to this point because I really like how she's stood up to the male main character. But to be frank, in every chapter recently, like the past 3 chapters, every time the male main character, Kylam, has had any conversation with another woman, she has just spiraled thinking about the fact, like, if I was with him, this totally means that he would cheat. He would definitely cheat on me. And how can I deal with that when I value myself? I said, girl, first of all, you're not together. So he actually is allowed to talk to other women. Second of all, even if you were together, he is allowed to be friends with other women. He is allowed to have conversations with other women. Just talking to another woman does not mean that he's cheating on you. And you might say, well, Jenny, has she been cheated on in the past? Does she have some kind of romantic trauma? No. So I know where this is going on the one hand, just because I've read a lot of fae romance in my time. And so I kind of know where this is going. And so I know why she's acting possessive. And I also know why he's acting possessive. But I don't know. It's been really frustrating to read, quite frankly. And I guess it's because I know the twist is coming. And I keep thinking, well, this is so obvious. And it would have to be obvious to nearly every reader of this book. It's taking a really long time to get there, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily know that I will continue on with this series. It's a real shame because I was so excited about this. And literally, I thought about this book every day when I wasn't reading it, when I wasn't listening to it. I was really, really excited by what was going on. I was really excited to get back into it. And then to be in the second half and feel like not only is it actually slow, but it's also disappointing in terms of characterization, which frankly is what I'm reading romance for. So this has actually been rather disappointing, unfortunately. But I did go rogue. I did not, in fact, start Once Upon a Broken Heart Saturday night. So what I actually wound up doing was starting a book on my Kindle that's called Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein, because I was thinking about things and I really wanted to prioritize one-off books that I wanted to get read before the end of the year, before I started in on an entire series. So this is a historical fiction that is about Mary Shelley's time in Scotland. She was sent to Scotland when she was a girl because she had a skin condition. I think she actually had psoriasis, and it was prescribed for her to go north, basically. So she spent some time in Scotland as a girl, and then there is a dual timeline, with the other timeline being in 1816 when she is writing Frankenstein. Of course, the timeline where she is writing Frankenstein is of far more interest to me because I love Percy Shelley. I love Claire, her stepsister, and I love Lord Byron. I love Dr. John Polidori. I love everybody who's there, and that is just infinitely more interesting. Isabella is the main focus of the Scotland passages, and Isabella Baxter was the child of the family that Mary was staying with, and she formed a really close friendship with her. This book is turning that friendship into something a little bit more. And basically it's because Mary relates to Isabella because Isabella has just recently lost her mother. And that is the theme of this book. The theme of this book is motherhood, because in the Scotland timeline, Mary is dealing with Isabella, who has recently lost her mother and really loved her and really had a great relationship with her. And Mary is dealing with the fact that she actually did not know her mother. Her mother died a few days after her birth. And so she's heard about her from everyone because her mother was famous in her own right. And she doesn't have any context for what's going on. She has no context for her mother because she never had a relationship with her. And so she is kind of talking with Isabella about the concept of grief, because in many ways, Mary is grieving her mother, though she never met her. She's grieving the fact that they did not really get a relationship, while Isabella is grieving a really great relationship that has been severed. And so that's interesting, and I think that's kind of tying them together as characters, sadness and depression, and understanding one another. But in the Switzerland timeline, 1816, Mary is dealing with the loss of her first child, which was a very, very big blow that Mary Shelley, quite frankly, never recovered from. It really, really set her back. It really impacted her mental health, and she really struggled with it because she felt like she grieved this child and that Percy Shelley did not. But Percy always says, I'm grieving and I'm processing it. I just do it differently to you. And she feels like because he's made no outward signs of grief that he must not be as sad as she is. And she's had a second child, and she feels like Percy has kind of replaced the first child with the second. And so there's a lot of conversation about motherhood in this, because it's just really, really interesting. I think that is one of the most interesting lenses to view Mary Shelley through. It's also one of the most interesting lenses to view Frankenstein through, in my opinion, because Frankenstein is absolutely about motherhood. It's also really about the absence of great women, and that is something that Mary Shelley had in her own life. She kind of lacked great female figures. She even talks about Claire, her stepsister, and how there are so many things about her that she really doesn't like. But she doesn't totally blame her for it, because she recognizes that Claire's mother raised her that way and possibly impacted her in that way. And so she thinks about the fact that she can either have no mother or she could have Claire's mother, and what would be the better alternative. And she agrees that maybe no mother would be better than what Claire has grown up with. And so it's just all a conversation around motherhood. And I just think it's fascinating. Honestly, it really is. I love Mary Shelley to death. Y'all know this. I mean, she just is that girl for me. You know, the ASMR content that's like, girl who's obsessed with you, braids your hair in the back of the class. Like, that's me with Mary Shelley. I love her to death. And so I love some facets of what this book is doing, because it's at least being kind of interesting and innovative with things. On the other hand, I don't really like the way this is written. This has been translated from the Dutch, and I sometimes feel like it's kind of a clunky translation. I really do wonder how it reads in the original language, because to me, the prose has been kind of choppy at times in a way that really takes me out of the reading experience. But I'm over halfway through this. I was reading this at 10:30 last night, so that's late for me on a Sunday night, I want y'all to know. So I'm hoping that I can finish that, because my holiday romance should be coming in today, hopefully right about now. Hopefully it's coming, because I really want to get into that, just because I feel like the pressure is on to read a Christmas romance before Christmas. So we'll see, but those are all of the reading updates for the time being. Y'all, I finished Mary and the Birth of Frankenstein, and this is going to be shaky cam. This is really fresh off the cuff, because I really needed to talk about this with someone immediately. The ending of this was so bizarre. I want to just say, on the whole, the book has to be one of the weirdest books that I have read. And it was weird in a way that did not feel meaningful or impactful or even relevant to what the author was trying to do. And so I just have a lot of questions about the conception and the conceit of this novel. I had the sense that it was getting weirder and weirder as the book went on. And I guess my issue is that when you first started the book, you felt like this is just run-of-the-mill historical fiction, and you never had a clear idea in your head that this was going to get weird at all. And so when it did, it felt strange, and it felt kind of out of nowhere. And I get why the author did it, because it's kind of talking about the idea of the monster, of Frankenstein's monster, being something that has always been with Mary and is just kind of coming out when she's writing Frankenstein. I don't know that that really worked here, because in some ways it works as a metaphor, and that's what I thought this book was initially going for, but then it just got so bizarre so fast. And really the weirdness here to me is in the writing, because the majority of the novel you are genuinely questioning if what happened is real or if it happened at all. I think that can be fun sometimes, but at other times it can be really disconcerting. And that's quite frankly how this book felt. I never knew what was going on, so I never felt like I was on sure footing the entire time I was reading it. I really would like to know how most people felt about this. I feel like Willow from Books and Bow loved it though, and I know that Willow also loves Mary Shelley, so I'm kind of skeptical. I wonder what she saw in this. I feel like the ideas were there, but the execution just wasn't working for me. I feel like I just had so many questions throughout this book, really about the conception of it and why it was written the way that it was. And so that just did not work for me. In fact, I gave this 2 stars. I feel like this has been a very unsuccessful reading vlog and a very unsuccessful reading week. But this was weird. I've read so many books about Mary Shelley this year, and so many of them have been incredible. I mean, absolutely incredible. And the weaknesses of this book really just pointed out the strengths of The Villa by Rachel Hawkins to me. Honestly, I really think that's my favorite book of the year, and it's definitely the best book about Mary Shelley that I've ever read. And to be frank, it's a retelling, and it doesn't even reference Mary Shelley exclusively, but I feel like it's the best I've ever seen Mary Shelley done in fiction. I appreciate what this book was trying to do. I liked that it focused on a different period in Mary's life than most of the time, but I still feel like I was kind of waiting to get back to the timeline where she was writing Frankenstein. And maybe most readers aren't feeling that, but I definitely was. So this was disappointing to me. Definitely one of my most disappointing reads of the year. There's always one. I feel like there's always one in the last couple of weeks of the year that really comes in right at the finish line to be one of my most disappointing, and that's what this book was. I mean this genuinely and honestly. I have no earthly idea when the last time was that I updated you. I know it was this week. I feel like it was Monday, but now it is Thursday, which means my dream of having this to upload tomorrow on Friday on my normal upload day is just completely gone. We're just going to accept it. But as is always the case, this is the week before Christmas, so things have been not really crazy, but it's just been a far more relaxed vibe, which has been kind of nice. So I've taken a break from thinking about filming, which has been great, but I also had a couple of days here and there where I just did not really read that much. Basically, my every waking thought has been about my reading journal for 2024. I am finally going to commit, and I'm actually going to have a real reading journal, if you know what I'm saying. I want to be like the reading journal girlies who really do kind of a reading bullet journal. So I just went ahead and I decided to commit to the idea of doing one kind of free-handed. And so it has really just consumed me. It is now an obsession, looking at different reading journals on Pinterest, Instagram, watching them on TikTok. I am trying to find all of the layouts that I want to do for the new year. So I'm definitely going to film a video around that because I think it'll be interesting to see what I start the year with and then how I end it. If it's a system that I really like, if I decide that I want to keep with it, I think it'll be nice to have a place to talk about books and to talk about kind of my reviews, or really just to write down thoughts as books are ongoing. So that's hopefully going to streamline a lot of my process, but I don't know. I worked on that some today, but I did manage to finish What Lies Beyond the Veil. And this was just okay to me. You know, I feel like in the last clip, I was talking about how I felt very negatively towards it, and I felt like it had just kind of squandered all of the promise that it had in the first chapters. But I'll be honest, I still think the book was kind of unique in how it set up and structured the romance, because this is a trope that's very common in fae romance books, but I still feel like it was approached from a unique standpoint in this book. And the issue that I take with it, and really the issue that I had with the book overall, is that it took so long to get there. I mean, we knew exactly what was going on, and I think anybody who was reading the book can pick up on the signs and can pick up on the clues, but for some odd reason, the main female character couldn't. And so that was really, really frustrating to me about halfway through the book, that she just was not reading the room. I still really liked her though, and in many ways I liked the male main character. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to carry on with this series. It'll definitely be after the first of the year because I enjoyed the audiobook experience of this. I really think that's what made this one fun. And so I think if I carry on with the series, I am going to do it in the new year via audio. I think I'll just carry on because all of the audiobooks are on Audible Plus, so they're free to listen to if you have an Audible subscription. I think that's what I'll do, but I'm not that eager to carry on with the series. So this was just kind of run-of-the-mill 3 stars for me, but I'm still really glad that I read it because I was kind of just in the mood for something like this. Now, my final reading update is going to be on my holiday romance. And y'all, this book is fine, I want to say that, but I feel like it's exactly what you think it's going to be. When you hear the description of this book, it literally is just like reading a Hallmark movie. It's nothing. It's just complete fluff. There's no real plot. That's Lovelight Farms. And you know, I'm going to be honest, I really do think a Hallmark movie vibe is kind of what I was looking for, and that's what I was searching for when I wanted to read a holiday romance. I wanted to feel like I was watching the Hallmark Channel. And I think here's the thing, is that Hallmark Channel movies function very well for me when they're on in the background. But they don't really play that well for me if I am sitting and paying close attention to them, if that makes sense. This would work incredibly well in a film format. It would work incredibly well specifically as a Hallmark Christmas movie, but it just does not require that much from me. And I feel like I'm always saying I'm looking for more books like that. And I feel like in many ways, this book also is just kind of what I always say I'm looking for out of romance, which is that the main female character is just a really nice person. And I'm often looking for romances where it's just really nice people finding each other. And that's definitely what this is. But she is incredibly insecure. And it's so frustrating to read about. And I guess that's the difference between me personally and most characters in romance novels that are structured like this. I am too direct to ever be in a situation like this. And so I kind of question why other people would ever let it go this far without saying something, if you know what I'm saying. This is Best Friends to Lovers, which frankly is a trope I love. I love friends to lovers. That's one of my favorite tropes. But they are fake dating because she owns a Christmas tree farm that's really down on its luck. And she entered a contest for a really big influencer to come out there and kind of promote the farm as somewhere to go during the Christmas season. And when she put in the application, she said she owns this farm with her boyfriend, which of course she doesn't have. So her best friend stepped up to the plate and he says, "I'll fake date you. I'll pretend to be your boyfriend when this influencer is in town." I think Friends to Lovers works really well for me because I understand the concept of not wanting to let your friendship get ruined over something like romantic feelings. I think that's really interesting, and I think that's probably relatable to most people. But I'll be real, if I was into a dude the way that this girl is into him, there would have been all sorts of signs dropped, you know? I would have dropped some hints here and there in a way, not to make him uncomfortable, but just to let him know I was open to it. And so I feel like she acts really shocked and surprised when her friend is all into this and is clearly dropping the hints that he is interested in her. And she is, once again, like the main character from What Lies Beyond the Veil, she is not reading the room. She's not picking up what he is putting down. And it's clear as day, you know? And so that's kind of frustrating to me. On the one hand, it's really nice because I don't feel like any of the arguments and any of the drama, none of it has been there because of them as characters. It's all been there from outside sources. They have fairly great communication, even though they don't necessarily know how each other feels. I still feel like when it comes to big issues, they clearly communicate very well, which must come from the background of being best friends. But on the other hand, I'll say it feels like the heavy lifting for what they have in common and why they would like each other, all of that happened prior to this book. And so I don't necessarily see a lot to root for. So this is charming. This is quite frankly what I was looking for. So I don't feel like I can complain about it that much, but it's hard to be reading something, especially to be in the middle of something that you know you're just going to give 3 stars to. But it is kind of giving me the Christmassy vibes. Really for the first half though, I'll be honest, this was mostly a Halloween and Thanksgiving book. And so I feel like I picked this up way too late. Like this was a book definitely to be reading earlier in the Christmas season. I'm hoping to sit down and finish this tonight because I have a couple of books on my Kindle that I'm really interested in getting to. But this is what I'm currently reading, and I have to say, I'm not that obsessed with it. Well, I did it. I finished Lovelight Farms, and I'll say the book was exactly what I thought it was going to be. It ended exactly the way that I thought, and that was comforting. It was kind of nice that it was so predictable, because that's kind of exactly what I was looking for. I really was looking for something that felt very Hallmark, very cheesy, very wholesome, and this book definitely provided that. But at the same time, I don't know that I was necessarily in the mood for something as just bubblegum fluff as this. There was really no drama here. There was no plot other than them being in this fake dating relationship. And that was nice, because on the one hand, it felt like the stakes were really, really low. And so I really liked that personally. On the other hand, I'm going to say that I felt like we got a lot of backstory and like a lot of detail about their families and drama that was going on with their families that didn't seem relevant at all to their relationship. It didn't even necessarily seem to play that large a factor in how they became friends and why they were relating to each other. It was just kind of weird. I felt like it was put in there just so that we would have some kind of drama or something kind of emotional at the heart of this, which I felt was kind of weird and really did feel really out of place in a story that felt pretty lighthearted at times. So I kind of thought some of the concepts here really weren't executed that well, all told, which is a real shame. In the end, I feel like it's just a 3-star read, and that's okay. Again, it was exactly what I was looking for, because I just wanted something that felt Christmassy, and it definitely really leaned into the Christmassy vibes towards the back half of the book. But like I said earlier, the first half of the book felt far more about fall specifically, but really about Thanksgiving. So I felt like this took a long time to get to the Christmassy portions, sadly enough. But I did enjoy this. I will say I kind of feel like I would be interested in picking up the rest of the series, because I wonder if some of the characters that were introduced in this are the ones that are getting books in the back half of the series. So if that is true, I kind of am intrigued, because I liked the town and I liked a lot of the side characters. It just depends. I am often not really in the mood for something just contemporary romance. When I am in the mood, I feel like these books would work really well for me. And apparently I just wasn't in a contemporary romance mood this week. So this was maybe the wrong time to pick up this book, but I wanted to read it while it was still Christmas. So this was a 3-star read, and it finishes up the week. I feel like I'm not going to get any more reading done before Christmas, which is in a couple of days. So I am going to end the vlog here. I would love to know what y'all are doing for Christmas, if you do anything for the holiday season. But that is going to be all for me today. I hope you're all having a great week. Happy reading. Goodbye.